Let's open this video up with a tweet from our buddy Sportsnet Stats. Take a look at this. Here are the Swedish first-round selections made by the Vancouver Canucks, presumably in their entire history as a franchise. In 1994, the Vancouver Canucks selected in the first round a defenseman that eventually became pretty good. His name was Mattias Ohlund. Not bad. In 1999, the Canucks had 2 first-round picks, and they selected 2 Swedes with those picks, Daniel and Henrik Sedin. Not bad. In 2017, the Vancouver Canucks had the 5th overall pick. They selected a guy by the name of Elias Pettersson, a guy whose name would inevitably be called by the Vancouver Canucks once again in the 2022 entry draft in the 3rd round, but that's a video for another day. And then you have the 5th first-round selection by the Vancouver Canucks to have been a Swede. It is, in 2022, Jonathan Lekkerimaki. We have one video on the YouTube channel going over Lekkerimaki. It's the reaction video to when he was actually drafted. But I wanted to use this time to actually explore more into what Lekkerimaki could be, just go over an entire scouting report, give some more opinions on this guy, and talk about another team that might have taken him a lot earlier in the draft. You already know who it is based off the title and the thumbnail, but we'll get to that later on in this video. We're talking about Lekkerimaki here as the 15th overall pick by the Vancouver Canucks in the 2022 draft. Now, if you've seen the Why I Want video, you'll know exactly my thoughts on this guy. Sure, he might not be the best player off the puck. Sure, he might not be the fastest guy off the puck. Sure, he might not be the best playmaker, but what he is the best at in this draft is scoring goals. He is arguably the best goal scorer of the entire draft. He arguably has the best shot, pure power, lethality, precision with the shot right there. He is an absolutely lethal goal scorer and a player who can just find the back of the net again and again and again. Sure, he's not the biggest guy out there. He's 5'11", 172 as a right-handed right-wing player, but he also is born on July 24th, 04, making him one of the youngest players in the entire draft, and I believe the youngest player selected in the first round. Now, you might say that's not really too significant, but it is quite interesting to note when you talk about guys that are taken in the first round that are born in, let's say, October, late September, or November of 2003. Guys like Lekkerimaki would not have joined hockey programs at the same age as these players, therefore giving them quote-unquote an extra year of development time. Obviously, they're in the same class of players for the sake of the draft, though, so it's not really all too much of a big game changer to acknowledge, but Lekkerimaki still was an extraordinarily young player. In his recent season for Djurgårdens at the J20 level, the junior team, he had 20 goals in 26 games played, 35 total points as well, and he scored 7 goals in 26 games with the regular SHL team as a 17-year-old once again. He also was a goal-a-game player for Team Sweden at the U18s, helping that team win gold with his 10 assists in 6 games in the process as well, bringing his entire point totals up to 2.5 points per game. Next season, he'll be going over to the Allsvenskan, and the reason for this is because Djurgårdens was actually relegated in the SHL in 21-22, so he'll be over there in what is essentially the AHL of Sweden, so it's really nice to see him get that little mix there. Instead of playing SHL number 1 pro hockey in Sweden and playing junior hockey in Sweden, he's playing in the COM middle right there. It's going to be a pretty interesting step to see how well he does against Allsvenskan competition. But if you take a look at some of the projected rankings of Lekkerimaki, he was supposed to go a little bit earlier in most people's eyes. Bob McKenzie had him at 8, Craig Button had him at 9, McKean's at 9 as well, ISS at 8, Future Considerations had him at 12, and Elite Prospects had him at number 18, so there is a little bit of a variance here, although there are many scouts that did think that this player would be a top 10 talent. Here are the quotes by some people that are important in the Canucks organization. Jim Rutherford said that the Vancouver Canucks had Lekkerimaki a lot higher up on their list. He can be an impact player. He can score. We will watch him properly. Mikael Samuelsson will watch over his development. We are very happy with the pick. And so, you know what? I really like that, by the way. Mikael Samuelsson, this is a guy that was one of the best Vancouver Canucks snipers in the late 2010s. If only this guy was healthy for the Stanley Cup Finals. 30-goal seasons for Vancouver, no biggie. 20-goal seasons, no biggie. Mikael Samuelsson was an absolute beast. And he's the guy who's going to be watching over Lekkerimaki and his development. By the way, Detroit fans, I know you're watching this video here too because we're talking about your team in this one. Yeah, Mikhail Samuelsson, he works for the Canucks. It's really nice to see him do all the things that he is doing and actually have that influence. Here's what Corey Pron on The Athletic said about the Canucks picking Lekkerimaki at 15. The Canucks add one of the best goal scorers of the draft at 15 in Lekkerimaki. While they had a need for more centers and defensemen in the pipeline, there was too much talent to ignore in this player. He projects as a top 6 winger who can be a major presence on the power play for them too. This is where we go over into the more interesting parts of the video. Let's check out an article on The Athletic. NHL Draft experts weigh in on the Canucks selections at the 2022 draft, published by Harman Dale a few days after the draft concluded. We'll leave a link in the description if you want to go ahead and read this, but for screenshot purposes, because The Athletic is paid for material, we're not going to be screenshotting this article and putting it on screen. Instead, we're going over onto the Canucks subreddit, because what this user, Mefnik, did was they posted one quote from this article as the title of their post. I thought it was really interesting to talk about where everything went with this draft pick, and this little idea kind of sparks an even bigger conversation at hand. This is what Cam Robinson said on the Athletic article published by Harman Dale. A ton of teams like Lekkerimaki. They had him high. I heard Detroit had a tough decision to make between Marco Kasper and Lekkerimaki at number 8, so we could have gone much, much earlier. But this is definitely a ceiling upside sort of pick. Now, just to remind you all, Detroit had the 8th overall pick in this year's NHL Entry Draft 2. They selected out of Sweden, the regular BK system, Marco Kasper, a guy who I believe is one of the most rock-solid hockey players in this entire draft, a two-way capable center, a penalty-killing center, a power play capable center, not the fastest guy in the world, not the biggest guy in the world, not the most skilled guy in the world, but he does everything very, very well. And Steve Yzerman went out there and said that they do feel that there is some underlying hidden talent available within Kasper and his game. Steve Yzerman usually makes some pretty good picks. You talk about the first one that he made back in 2019, Moritz Seider, taken in the first round, 6th overall, when he probably shouldn't have gone there in the eyes of many NHL fans and media. You talk about 2020, Lucas Raymond, first round pick, pretty good there. Simon Edvinsson and Sebastian Cossa were 2021 picks that are doing fantastically as well. Steve Yzerman has had a pretty good track record of taking guys so far, and Marco Kasper, I feel, is going to follow that pattern. But to hear that they actually had Lekkerimaki that high, and they were thinking very much so that he could have been their guy at 8, it makes me super excited as well. Mefnik summarizes this in the body of the Reddit post. I found this bit interesting in Dale's article. We know how Yzerman likes reaching for his guys, so if he had him in the top 10, it definitely corresponds with the idea that we had him high as well. And so now, taking a look at where this player was supposed to go, he was kind of supposed to be a top 10 pick in general. 9th, 8th overall is where most of the projections had him. If this player was taken in that range by Steve Yzerman nonetheless, and Steve Yzerman is a guy that reached for Seider at 6, I feel a lot more confident in the talent and assessment of this player heading into the long-term future. I was already pretty comfortable considering he played a whole bunch of games in the SHL and he scored a whole bunch of goals already as a 17-year-old, but just knowing what we know about who had this player where makes me even more excited. And so, even though the Vancouver Canucks list of first-round Swedes is not long, it's only 5 names long: Olin, Sedin, Pettersson, and now Lekkerimaki. If there is a proper development path to go underway here, as guided by Mikhail Samuelsson of all people, I am all of a sudden a lot more optimistic into cheering this guy on and seeing whether or not he can live up to the names that came before him. Talk in the comments your thoughts about Jonathan Lekkerimaki, the newest Vancouver Canucks prospect, the best Vancouver Canucks prospect in the system, because the Canucks don't really have too many good prospects, unfortunately speaking. Talk in the comments your thoughts about where he went in the draft, how good you think he's going to be for Vancouver, and your thoughts as well as to Yzerman and the Red Wings having him as high on their board too. I hope you enjoyed this video. Juraj, and bye.